Vicki had asked about the procedure for taking these lamps apart. I put a couple of lamps back on the table that came from across the street. The headlamp is a brown 19, and the side lamp is a brown 100. And if you look at the circular that Susan printed off for us, I've got a step-by-step procedure outlined there for disassembly of the parts and then reassembly of the parts. And this is assuming that we're doing dent repair or swapping of parts between multiple lamps, etc. We don't have one of the 100s here that we can take a lens out of, so I'm going to kind of talk through this. What we're looking to do is, much like we did with the first lamp that we worked with this morning, where we had used a wetted towel on both sides of the glass. We're protecting all of the glass inside the lamp using that process, and we're going to use heat via, for taking these parts apart, I use the MAP gas. And what I'm doing is, again, masking off everything that's got the potential of being damaged by the heat. That is, I want to fully wrap up the chimney, especially because they're susceptible to stress cracks around the OD. The internals, you're going to strip as much from the lamp as you can possibly take off of the door, the font. This is going to have the liner in place inside, and this gets kind of dicey because those are silver plated, and solder really likes silver. You don't have to have flux on it, and if you get spattering of flux on the silver, you've ruined it. You're not going to take it off without seeing a blemish there that's taking the silver off with it. So very important to keep all of the work outside the lamp. As the heat is applied, I use a shielded razor blade. Different animal. This would be the side lamp, square door side lamp. But we got a procedure for this guy as well. Yep, exactly. So we're applying heat to ideally the first location on these side windows is going to be the side that has the 16 gauge wire. And when you have, as this solder fastens the side lamp frame, the window frame to that 16 gauge wire is liquefied, just slide the shielded razor blade between it to separate it. And if you can move down about an inch or so from a corner, now you can start using a piece of cardboard in there to ensure that as you're moving along, releasing the solder, your past work is not reattaching to the solder. Move from the 16 gauge wire side of the frame to the housing sides of the frame. Doing the same thing, just applying heat, scoot that blade along. As you see the solder begin to liquefy, shove the blade in there, let it cool down a little bit, and as soon as you can, replace the blade with a piece of cardboard. Eventually, you're going to go around the four sides of the frame, and these come apart fairly easily. Can't say that for the E&Js, can't say that for the Atwood Castles. They're a much more complicated animal. But two of those and a hingeable door removed from the lamp, and now you've got the housing with the liner inside it. The liner is
Doesn't look like much, does it?
these are actually Atwood Castles here, but similar. The liner has a flange around the perimeters of the reflector piece, and they're not fully soldered. They're going to have spot solder that's just tacking this piece in place. And you seek out where those solder joints are. They're going to be visible. Doing the same thing, putting heat to it and sliding that razor blade to separate the parts. Again, as soon as the parts are separated, stick a piece of cardboard in there to hold your place, and so it doesn't try to reattach on itself. And having released those solder joints, this piece will collapse on itself and is removable. These 16 gauge wires are soldered at the top and the bottom. It takes very little heat to release those, and that part comes completely out. It is possible to take the chimney apart as well, and if you're building a lamp from scraps, as I've done, you're going to need to do that. And fortunately, where I've been able to salvage a chimney, I had no more use for the housing, so I didn't mind cutting it up. And I know that sounds terrible, but you know, if you've made the determination that that part is not usable for your new lamp, then it's probably trash anyway, right? The parts are rolled together. Again, solder releases the flange that's visible from the inside of the housing, and by splitting the housing up to where that attachment happens, you can pull those pieces apart when you've applied heat to the flange. You're going to need to bend the flange, ultimately bend the flange down to be able to get it into your new housing. So this is a good time to do that. If you've got a gap that's created when you pull that piece of brass out, I slice the flange maybe ½ inch apart so that it bends easy without distortion happening up here above the housing. And there's actually a reinforcing rib in there that helps with that. So if you can imagine the let's say this is the flange going up to the chimney, and you will have this configuration before. You will have this configuration after. So you're doing two things. You're going to be cleaning these pieces off. They were soldered together originally. Don't need to do an aggressive cleaning on them, but you want to be able to put fresh solder on it. So sand it off, clean it off with a Dremel wire wheel, whatever it takes, and bend the tabs down. Again, the original diameter is going to be intact on your new part. So unless you've got this this diameter exactly where it was, you're not going to be able to get that down inside the new piece. Once you do have it inside the new piece, you can bend these tabs back. If you clean the mating surface on the inside of your new housing, fluxed it, tinned these parts, again, bend them back, a little bit of heat, you're done. These doors on the John Brown parts are just a bear to do repairs to. You've got to take the glass out of it, obviously, to do that. They made that as difficult as they possibly could. What John Brown did to construct these was similar to having rolled parts together. They folded these parts together. And what this guy looks like in section is this, where your glass sits in here like so. Not good. When I go to take this apart, I've got to take this portion and fully bend it out of the way to get that glass out of there. And I've got to do that on two sides. I don't want to do it on more than two sides because the probability is when I go to bend this, I'm going to damage it. And in fact, to give myself a little bit of an advantage here, I know that if I pull this open, I'm going to deform this frame on a visible side, and that's a no-no. So I'll take a sander and I'll knock this edge off right here. I'll knock it flat on this, as much unexposed portion of this corner, this edge, as possible. So I'm effectively reducing the wall thickness of this material at that point. And if you look at that blown up a little bit, that's going to look kind of like this. So I gave myself a thin wall. I'm propagating a bend right there. I'm making a hinge out of that. And there's a good possibility that's going to break. When I fold that open and fold it back, it's taking about all the bend of use it's going to take. 50% of the time though, it will bend back into shape, and I don't have to do anything to it. If it does break, I don't care, because I'm going to come in here and solder these pieces back together. And because my edge that I reduce wall thickness on is on an underside, it's not so visible. Remember, this is attached to the housing right here. And I'm going to come in there and put a little bit of solder in that anyway. These frames are fairly ornate. They've got this bead that does not help matters at all because it's fairly fragile. Many of these lamps, much like this part, I'll pass this around here in a minute, have dents in that area. If I'm a real stickler on these, and I did a set where I did replace these pieces, did repair these pieces and put them back. What I was able to do, much like the Bondo sample that you saw, I made myself a template for the outside surface. I made myself a template that protected this area right here, that established this straight rolled edge as it was supposed to be. Pardon me. And I came in here with a piece of steel wire with the ends rolled. That is a piece of steel wire with the ends radiused, so that I didn't have the ends digging into my part when I beat it down in there with a hammer. And I just went along that damaged area with that wire, scooting, squashing that damaged piece back into form. And that does about a 90% job. Once again, you take the emery paper, scuff that surface up until your scuff is not seeing a low spot, and hit it on the polisher. You're good to go. As I said, when you're putting the part back together, loading the glass back in, two sides have not been disturbed. So you want one of those sides to be your top. It's your nice edge, right? And strategically locate these as you see fit. But you're going to be putting a solder edge on these downrights. So don't be concerned about having a piece that's been repaired there. Solder the pieces all back together, that is, put the frame back together the way it came apart. Tinning the piece, tinning the frame, and then tinning the housing itself. And the tinning does probably a 75% job. You put pressure on the side lamp glass to hold it in place. Put a little bit of weight on that so that as the solder is taking effect, it's pushing it as close to the lamp as possible. The solder is going to leave gaps. You're not going to have a good consistent bead. And what I do for that is I use a very thin 0.3 diameter solder. Got it right here. And I use a needle tip soldering iron, and I've got that laying around there somewhere. Here it is. No, that's not it. It's floating around here somewhere. Anyway, putting solder back into those voids, fill those voids up. 10 bucks at Harbor Freight. Fill those solder voids back up and dress them off with the emery paper. Clean as much of that solder off of the solder joint as possible before you head into the buffer with it and do your finishing work with the buffer. The 105 lamp comes apart almost identical, except that you don't have this hassle of dealing with the panel. Doesn't have this bizarre labyrinth holding the glass together. It's got a bigger problem. It has a rolled in lens, and so I hate to put heat on these original parts because I don't know what causes those cracks, but my guess is, you know, heat could have as much of an impact on this as who knows what. Unfortunately, among the many great reproduction parts that are out there, terrific spinning pieces that are available for these lamps, this is not one of them. And so I made these myself. And what I did was to have created a mold set. And I'm just going to simplify this. 1/2 of the mold in my chuck, and another piece on my tail shaft here. And my sheet of brass has got a penetration in the center. That is, I started out with, I think we started out with a 2-inch diameter hole cut through there initially. That's to give the brass a little bit of a relief, start stretching. If it doesn't have that, it's going to struggle to start making its stretch into this pocket. Using a stylus that I made out of UHMW, and actually we made them out of UHMW and we made them out of wood, which is nothing more than a stick with a rounded edge on it, held here by your tool holder. Diving into that part while this is running at a low speed, I'm talking like less than 400, this brass is just going to walk. I mean, it has absolutely no resistance at all to bending and folding back into this form. Okay, that part created, we've got an animal that looks like this, and that's about halfway there, because we take our glass piece and set it back in here, and now we need something that's going to duplicate the rolled in effect that the original lamps have. And I couldn't come up with anything, so we did what the original lamps did. We actually rolled this edge. And the way we did it was we put, we have a similar fixture that mounted the sample. Here's our sample. Here's our glass. We had a little piece of rubber hose as a pressure that held the lens into this front of the part. And using that same stylus, we're able to come in here behind the location of the lens, walk in toward the part with the stylus. And what it created was a rolled edge. Presumably exactly what the good folks at John Brown did. And worked out fantastic. What's really nice about this process is that as slow as these pieces are going, this stuff is heating up appreciably while it's being worked. And when you roll that edge, it heats up. It snugs the brass down onto your lens while it's hot. So as it shrinks, it grabs it. And I'm just guessing, but that's probably a contributor to why these split at the edges. They're just under such tension. From that point, we're able to trim the edges off, fold the edges over. As you see on the original part there, it's just a really simple construction. We have 2 tangs coming off one side that roll around a piece of wire that create the hinge. And I initially did a kind of a sloppy cut on these, and then I came back and dressed these up with a file. Cut my edges square, made it look nice and neat, and fairly simple part. The 3 of these parts are made nearly identical, and reinstalling these is much less a hassle than it is with the side lamp bevel glass pieces for a couple of reasons. When you do tinning on this, you can bring your solder back a whole lot further away from the edge, so you're reducing the probability that that's going to ooze out onto some area that's visible. Works just fantastic. Tin the inside of the side lamp, the tail lamp housing, tin the edge, corresponding edge of the housing. Put the heat to it, and boom, it's there. And if for whatever reason it's even slightly loose, you have the opportunity to go inside the lamp, because this reflector on the inside is silver plated. A little bit of heat on the outside, and a little tiny piece of solder on the inside. Anything that's loose, you can nearly invisibly, I'll say, re-secure it if you have to. But I've not had to do that. I found that tinning these was just perfect.
Scott, what did you say you made the stylus out of?
I used one that was made out of UHMW, ultra high molecular weight. It's like a bearing quality plastic.
It's an industrial plastic.
Like Delron or something like that?
No, it's not Delron. It's the plastic that's used for sliding mechanisms and bushings, like a conveyor, an industrial conveyor where the belt slides on a plastic surface. That's UHMW.
You get it from like the MasterCard or something like
You
that?
can get it from the MasterCard.
To look at it, if you just look at it, it looks like a sheet of Teflon. They look very similar. They're
Yeah.
both white, but Teflon's usually thinner, softer, and the UHMW is completely machinable. So,
We also use wood, a hardwood dowel does the same thing. The wood is a little bit more brittle. That is, because this is applying pressure to your part. There's a chatter in there that says that, the parts, the stylus is seeing some resistance. Never had one of the wood pieces break, but the UHMW just held up a little bit better.
Scott, I have a question. You were talking when you formed that first pocket. You brought your stylus in, but you showed a plate here that I think you were using pressure to hold the brass against your mandrel on the other side.
Over here?
Yeah, well,
No.
no, okay.
No, it's pretty much all contained here at the chuck.
It had to be because you brought your tool in there. So how did you hold the brass on that mandrel?
It's got, I put four holes in
Okay, so you just
unused
screwed it on.
areas. Yes, sir.
Was John Brown the original maker, or was that an aftermarket?
John Brown was an original maker. John Brown Company is still in existence. They are a steel company.
In Detroit or in?
No,
Columbus, Ohio.
so is it
Columbus.
Columbus?
I think actually John Brown is now out of business. It's just been recent.
Okay.
Yeah, just recently went out of business.
Yeah. Other questions?
How many of those did you make before you got a good one?
Well, this is my stash here. These are the pieces that I trashed. And what I learned on these was that I was having problems with the parts splitting initially. I didn't anneal them. I did an initial annealing with them, and it still looked like the part was straining. So I annealed it twice. That is, start pulling it in, take it out of the form, anneal it again, and 2 applications did the trick.
Tell me about the annealing. What's
Just using a rosebud and getting the part to the place where it's just starting to orange. And then just set it on a table, let it cool at room temperature. And you'll notice it right away.
It softens it.
The tinsel goes like right now.
and you just did that around the part, the place where you were working?
No, we did the whole part, set it on a piece of steel and.
Oh, the whole thing?
Yep.
You got a gas, or you stick a gas, or you do the same thing?
These 105 lamps are fairly rare. When they do come up, frequently they've got the cracks, which to me doesn't mean anything. I mean, if it's a nice looking part, polish it up and use it. They're still beautiful, they're still structurable. But I was putting stuff together from scratch, and what I was doing, because 105s were made out of unobtainium, is I was buying scrap 100s that are more plentiful. And once you pare down the 100 and get rid of that cap that's got the 100 insignia on it, you got the carcass to start building a 105. This cap that's got the 105 on it, you can buy from Vintage Brass. Ron Gossick, anybody know Ron? Vintage Brass sells created and sold the 100 copies and the 105 copies. So if you've got the 105 cap and you've got a set of your own side plates, you got a 105. And my guess is cost-wise, I mean, to build these pieces from scratch, probably $200, because some of that expense was obtaining the lenses. And these lenses are the same as you will find in the 115, which is very common. So if you find a trash 115, it may or may not have a set of these centrifugal lenses. And by that I mean this centrifugal line work. Some of the 115s at some point just became plain non-ridged glass. And so I just kept an eye out for them on eBay, and you know, somebody would have one for 50, 60 bucks that had the chimney crushed on it or whatever. Using a Dremel tool, slice the side of it 2 places, the lens pops out, and you're good to go.
So what's a 105 and a 100, what were they on, as far as when they first came out? What were they on?
They started using them in 11,
Okay.
and they went to the 110 and the 115 during the 1913 model year. And some of those may have shown up in 1912.
What's the advantage of the 105 over the 100?
Well, the 105 is a tail lamp. It's got this style panels on 3 sides, where the 100 has got double glass. Any other questions?
I've got a couple of tail lights that are from the wrong side of the
I
car.
wanted to take some time today also to talk about some other fabrication, brass fabrication
Or the
for,
clear in the blue.
obviously, my projects have been, I've got a 09 that I'm working on now that I'm creating some pieces for, and then I did 2 12s. And pieces that I had a need for that were absolutely not to be had. The town car for 1912 was a body, it was a turnkey operation that was furnished by the O.J. Bodette Body Company. Ford did not design manufacture or in any way influence the pieces that went into this body. Bodette made basically the same body as a horse-drawn vehicle at that time. So they were buying pieces like side lamp brackets out of catalogs, the same catalogs that coach manufacturers were buying these pieces from. And for that reason, Ford has a part number assigned to this, but there are none of those parts to be had. And so a friend of mine is a well-known T guy named Jim Finney in Oblong, Illinois. He owns an original, fully original 1912 town car. And I got to know him and was invited to stop down to his place and take measurements on these parts. And I took little advantage of that. He wouldn't let me take these parts off the car. I wanted to take these side lamps off and send them to my casting buddy. He said, no. He said, you can measure it, you can like it, you can photograph it, but you're not taking it off the car. So I appreciated that, and I took full advantage of that. So I documented all of these parts on this car that had to be either machined or formed or cast. And this was one of them. And I was amazed at just how simple this process is. This was a pattern that I made from the drawing that I had created, made out of balsa wood. Very simple to put together. Balsa wood, Bondo, piano wire. There's a Band-Aid in there. It's real simple stuff. There's no Band-Aid. But I found when I took it around the foundries, two real significant problems. One is nobody in Cincinnati casts yellow brass. I mean, it's, yeah, I don't know if the EPA ran them out or whatever, but you can't get that done in Cincinnati anymore. And so I started checking around to find somebody who could make this part. And I was consistently getting the response that, well, you need to go to a pattern shop and you need to have a formal mold made, which includes a piece called batter board, which I guess is some sort of primary mounting. And then because the pull for this mold had to happen in multiple directions, they were going to fix me up with like a $400 mold for each side. I said, nah, we're not going to do that. And I got in touch with this guy named Kloppenborg Foundry in Dubuque or someplace, Iowa. And the guy said, send me your part. And I sent him a set of these out there. He says, how many of these you want? Half dozen. A month later, I get these castings, and they were just beautiful, just perfect. Now they didn't look like that, but they're just absolutely lovely. I mean, pit-free and gorgeous cartridge brass. $65 a piece is what you got for them, which you know, to be able to reproduce a part like that to me was a bargain, just a bargain. And because I had the assortment of buddies who were building 2 Land LAs, another town car, and some guy who had a dream car in the future, they wanted these parts, so they bought mine. So everybody's happy in the end. So if you see the Rosenthal car, these are painted black on that because that's what Ford did in 1912. But I kept a set of them and I polished them up because they started using them as early as '09 on the town car, on the Bodette bodies. But again, something that you can do, anybody can do. One of the very valuable tools that I've been able to take care of, to take advantage of, is using AutoCAD to draw this stuff up. Oh, yeah. You know, if you're not using AutoCAD, get on it right away. It's free. And thanks to my buddy Tim back here, I had been using AutoCAD in my business, and they got a licensing fee annually, $800 or something like that. Well, when I got laid off, my AutoCAD got laid off. So, like, what are we going to do? Tim says, hey, I found this the free CAD site, and sure enough, it's like an AutoCAD clone. And the beauty of the AutoCAD is not just the accuracy of it, but that you can do a copy of your drawing, stick it on a Word document, and send it to all your friends. Anybody can open it and look at it. It's just a handy dandy tool, you know. And before that, here I was, you know, sketching stuff out by hand and taking photographs of it, looking like Fred and Barney or something. And
3D print that now.
yeah, you can 3D print that. This is just a great tool. Like I said, if you're not on it, check it out. If you can type, you can do AutoCAD. It's just very, very simple. My kids play with it. Back to dent repair for a minute. Fonts. These. This is a brown font that I picked up at. I don't know if I got it at a swap meet or somebody gave it to me or whatever the deal was, but it had been crushed on the bottom. And I got some photographs in here I want to show you a little bit later in our program, and just what some of the stuff started out as and how it kind of evolved. But here again, to be able to take advantage of great parts like this that are just about orphans because they're damaged. You know, nobody building a 98-point car wants a boo-boo like this on it, and I bought this for $15, I think it was. It didn't have the burner in it, but I'll show you where we were able to, using this technology, actually, that piece right there, was able to get down inside there and knock that dent out to the point where I was able to use the emery paper and buffing, and I'll pass it around.
You did that through the little hole there in the top?
I did. What I had to do here is I had to take a collar that's located inside here out. There's a feature inside these that's an anti-splash, and it's basically a little cylinder that extends down off the bottom of the threaded boss here. And you can reach in there with a pair of needle nose pliers. In fact, these were the pliers in question right here. You can grab a lip where that collar is rolled on itself, grab a lip and pops right out of there. And that piece removed, I was able to get this forming piece up against the damaged area to the point where it's not perfect, but when you see a photograph of it, you'll agree. This is a heavily damaged piece. And our good friends at Lang's sell great reproduction of this part. In fact, it's one of Ron Gossick's parts, $190. So, you know, for no, that's just the font, just the brass piece.
Do you have a place where you can find the burners?
I'll buy them for junk. I mean, you buy trash lamps, and you know, they're fairly common. Pardon?
But then how did you get the silver that shiny?
Stick it on a buffer. Yeah, it's nickel. It's nickel plate.
You just gotta keep working at it.
Yeah, really.
Get a better plate.
So you have to send it out and have it reloaded?
Oh, no, that's original.
With the nickel plating, you said be polished up like that?
That's it right there. Yeah. Yep. I don't have one of the. I've got a couple of nasty ones at home that are where the nickel is actually burned away up near the top that were heavily used, but they still polish up real nice. And somebody that finds that on your car, they're just looking too close. I'm amazed at some of the stuff that folks are willing to throw away. You know, I find somebody that's restoring a car, I buddy up to them. You know, if you got any leftover parts, you know, they've always got something left over. So they'll threaten to take them to Chickasha and stuff like that. You know, oh man, I could really use one of those. Yeah, I used to have one of those. They'll come off them. But as I said, there are just plenty of these parts out there, and I think the John Brown components were most beautiful. parts that they offered during the years that they were available. Really handsome.
Very nice. And you had to put any of these little tiny things in?
Yep.
I
Yep,
assume they're just soldered in there?
they are. I
Do they
grind
have
them
flange
off.
on the backside or anything?
No, I just use a piece of brass rod. I drill them out, stick a piece of brass rod in there. A little bit of solder in business. The lamp will actually cut through those. You'll see, look at them close when the lamp is fitting sloppy, you know, the font is fitting sloppy, and see if that part doesn't look like this.
Yeah.
The keeper will actually saw them. Anybody need this to stay up here?
That's so neat.